Hello, welcome to Gardener's World. We're at that lovely time of year when the garden is changing almost by the hour. But there is still a real sense, certainly here in the Jaw Garden anyway, of the orchestra warming up. It's not yet really playing its tune. It's changing all the time, but at the moment it's all just different levels of green with touches of intense colour, like the crown Imperials, like the Euphorbia, just a few tulips starting, but there could be twice as many tomorrow, and by next week, probably they'll all be out. The change is happening so fast.
This week, Nick Bailey is on the trail of Shakespeare's poisons and love potions.
Cupid's arrow fell on a little white flower, turning it purple with love's wound, hence its power as an elixir.
We catch up with Frances Toppin to see how her veg trail is going at RHS Rosemoor. And last year in April, we went to Pashley Manor, where their annual Tulip Festival was in full swing.
Are the tulips going to come out on time? Are they going to be desperately early? Are they going to be late? You know, people think I'm 85, and actually I'm only 58, you know.
And seeing as we are celebrating all things Shakespearean, it's fitting that I'm continuing my new veg beds because they are woven exactly in the style that vegetables were grown in during Shakespeare's time, which coincidentally was exactly the period that this house and garden were first made.
But first, I'm going to sow some flowers in the new cutting garden.
Now, what have you got? What have you got? Those are the seeds I was going to sow, Nellie. Now, right, I was going to sow blue perm in my cutting garden, and I'm not anymore. Come on. Right, our second attempt. So, not bupleurum, but bells of Ireland, which again are grown centrally for their foliage. I've covered with cloches the ground, just hoping it will keep it a little bit drier. So rake that off, that's not too wet. There we go. Using a board as a spacer, so I need to be that far away from it. Now, bells of Ireland, I always treat as a hardy annual. Sow them direct after all frost has passed, but here, even though it's fairly cold and wet here, we've never had any problems with them. The biggest problem are dogs eating your seeds before you can sow them. So I'm going to draw my drill. Now, as ever, it is quite important to try and sow these thinly. Get the last one out. It's funny how the last seed will stick in the crease of the packet. There you go. And just sprinkle them along. Now, at this time of year, the soil tends to be damp and warm, so it should germinate fast. I wouldn't expect to see anything for a few weeks. So what bells of Ireland will give me, Molicella, is these greens which fade into a kind of almost yellow, which against either bright colours or very pale colours acts as a really good foil. You need that leavening influence in any kind of flower arrangement, and therefore in your cutting garden. I'm going to add now some plants. This is Ammi visnaga, which is like a kind of posh cow parsley. It has a slightly rounded umbel of white flowers made up of hundreds of little florets. And then, as you can see, very loose, finely cut foliage. And I'm just going to put a row along here, and I'll use my measuring device again and just plant them out. Ammi, whether it be Ammi majus or Ammi visnaga, grows much better if you sow it in September rather than spring. You can get seed and sow it as late as early April, but it never develops half as well. So if you haven't sown it now, buy it as a plant and then buy some seed and grow them yourself for next year. Around the time of Shakespeare's death in 1616, tulips began to be amongst the most valuable things on this planet. And people made and lost vast fortunes. And this beautiful flower became a symbol of greed and wealth and man's insatiable desire to possess that which it thinks is most valuable. Well, here in the spring garden, I try and use tulips in a completely different way. I want them to weave in and out of what else is going on, to blend, to highlight. So you've got the lovely lily-flowered West Point. It's yellow and these petals curve up and they twist and then open out. And the spring green, which is chunkier but delicate because you get this green flash on a white background. So you get this spring lightness of touch. Now, of course, tulips are magnificent. And now we can just enjoy them as a flower. But very few people grow them in such quantity or with such panache as they do at Pashley Manor. And we went along last year when they were at their very best.
I've always, since about the age of 4 onwards, been interested in gardening. We moved here in 1981, when it was, to say the least of it, a bit of a muddle. But we had the most wonderful views and beautiful countryside. My life is surrounded by the garden. It's enough to keep me fully occupied every waking moment. That is what I really enjoy. It might interest you to know how this Tulip Festival started. A friend of ours telephoned me to say, do you realize what this year is? I said, not particularly. And they said, it is the 400th anniversary of the first tulip to be landed in Europe. I think you should have a tulip festival. So, roughly that's what we did. And we slowly increased the size. So we went for the second year, we were very proud of having 5,000 tulips in the garden. And the next year, 7,500. And then, we got over the 10,000 a year or two later. This year we planted best part of 25,500 tulips. And I think it's 107 different varieties. One of the things that's exciting is the anticipation of the build-up to it. Are the tulips going to come out on time? Are they going to be desperately early? Are they going to be late? You know, people think I'm 85, and actually I'm only 58, you know. One of the great joys of this garden is Keith, our head gardener. Keith has worked with us all his working life, and he came as a schoolboy in the holidays, and then he went to horticultural college, and then he came back here, and I appointed Keith at a very young age to be head gardener.
This border here has one of my favourite colour combinations of tulips, with the green star here, with the green streak as a lily flowered, and then you have the white trumpeter as well with it, which is just almost a pure white version of it. So they create a really nice combination together, and we found it's a real winner over the years. Tulips in containers can be really good. You can create a really good long-lasting effect if you double layer your planting. Put one layer of tulips in quite deep into the pot, adds 2 or 3 inches of compost, and then another layer of tulips above. And the lower ones will obviously come through behind the higher bulbs, and you'll get a much longer flowering period, and helps to fill the pot, makes it feel really dense and full. With the tulips, we'll use underplanting, predominantly forget-me-nots, because they'll come in most of the ranges of colours for the tulips. We'll also use red bellis in the hot borders. You have a bit of a love-hate with them, I suppose, because they're superb at this time of year. They give us such a good show with this volume of tulips in the gardens, but we're almost cursing them at times because it's putting us so far behind, but they're certainly something we'll never be without. When we lift the bulbs after they finish flowering, they'll be boxed up and donated to local charities, things such as hospices and nursing homes, and they'll plant them in their grounds, and then we'll have a brand new, fresh batch of bulbs come in for the next season to guarantee the perfect flowering.
One thing is whether I have a favourite tulip. It depends, really. I suppose I would say Queen of the Night, that near black tulip, so elegant and so distinctive. But I particularly enjoy a tulip called Angelique, which is very attractive and happens to be my wife's name, so it all fits in nicely. I'm often asked whether I mind our garden being filled up with visitors. The answer is certainly no, I don't. They spur us on to try and see that we do a good job. And it's a pleasure to show people something of which, frankly, we're quite proud.
This was how vegetables and herbs would have been grown from medieval times right up till the Stuart times, i.e. the end of Shakespeare's life. And then things started to change in the 17th century. And when this house was built, this is how the garden would have been made. With woven beds. I've used hazel. These are just normal bean sticks that you can buy, hazel bean sticks, and chestnut posts. And I've done these 4 beds. But I'm going to make another little one now. And you start with the posts, which have been sharpened, and I've cut down to size, but you can see they're pretty substantial. Quite a lot has to go in the ground because there's a lot of pressure by the sticks. The upside of that is they're really strong. And chestnut has 2 huge virtues. The first is it's really good at surviving in wet soil. Makes brilliant posts. It doesn't rot. At least if it does so very slowly. And the second virtue is it's dead easy to split. So if I get a splitting axe like that, and that's it. I've got 2 posts. That's the easiest bit of the whole operation. The absolute critical thing, if you're doing this yourself, is to get your posts, whatever you use, dead straight. You'll have to forgive me, I'm going to huff and puff. Here we go. And who said that gardening was a sedate activity? So I'm going to start that end. And what I do is, so it doesn't break, you twist at the same time as bending. To nail the top corners to stop them springing up, and then cut the excess posts clean. That's all there is to it. A few weeks ago, Frances Tophill started a trial at RHS Rosemoor in Devon of vegetable seeds. And we went down there to see how she's getting on.
A few weeks ago at the beginning of April, I sowed ridge cucumber, sweet corn and tomato seeds to kick off the veg trial which I'm running, to find out which varieties give the best crop and, crucially, the best taste. The cucumbers and sweet corn aren't ready yet, but the tomatoes got off to a flying start. Our tomato seedlings are up and ready to be pricked out. Now, basically, you can see in this pot it's quite congested. We have 6 in here, and there's not enough room for them to grow. But as well as that, there comes a point in every seed's life where it's used all the goodness from the endosperm in the seed, and now it really has nothing to live on. So I'm potting it from this low nutrient compost into something a little more nutrient rich. So we've got a slow release fertiliser in there, just a basic multi-purpose compost. This is tumbler F1, which means it's very good for going in a hanging basket, which is great because all our tomatoes will be eventually going into hanging baskets. But for now, they need to go into this slightly bigger pot where they will grow on a little bit more. The idea with this is we want to get as much root out as possible. Always pull these plants out by the leaves. If we crush this stem, the plant will not grow back again. So a damaged leaf isn't the end of the world. A damaged stem is bad news. And gently pulling so we have as much root as can be with the plant. And that can just be gently pushed in. Generally speaking, when you pot something from one container to another or even to the ground, you want the soil to be at the same level in the pot as it is in its new position. But with this tomato, I'm actually going to bury it a little bit deeper. It's about ½ inch of extra compost, and that just stops this plant from getting too leggy once it grows up, makes it a more robust specimen. And that's it. A bit of water, and I'll put this back into the polytunnel where it will get bigger and stronger until it's ready to be hardened off.
You can have that bit there. There we go. We'll be going back to Rosemoor to see how Frances is getting on very soon. And this is done for the moment. This little bed here is designed for growing lots of lovely vegetables. And so I think I better start. Now, in honour of the Tudor nature of these beds, and also Shakespeare's birthday and death, I think we should have a Tudor vegetable in here first. I'm going to plant some skirret. In Shakespeare's time, it was a very common root vegetable. In fact, right the way through from medieval England up until the 19th century, most vegetable gardens would grow it, both for its vegetable, which is somewhere between carrot and parsnip, and also for medicinal purposes. It was used as a poultice for sores, and people believed that it warded off the plague. They would fry them in butter or roll them in flour, and they were sweet. And that was the key, because remember, this is a time before sugar was widely available. So any sweet root vegetable was highly prized. And you simply plant them so that they're level with the soil, and they will die right back in winter. And if I put them here, this will stay here. They're like good drainage, but also plenty of moisture. Well, they're going to get plenty of moisture, that's for sure. As part of our celebration of Shakespeare's birth and death, Nick Bailey has been looking at the horticultural and botanical references in his work.
I've been head gardener here at Chelsea Physic Garden for 6 years, but that's just a small blip in the garden's history. It was established in 1673 to train apothecaries in the identification and use of medicinal plants. In other words, they needed to determine between the good and the ill, the poisons and the potions. A huge step towards this understanding came in 1597, just as Shakespeare was hitting his stride as a playwright, when John Gerard published his Herbal, a general history of plants.
It really would have been the most extensive book on botany at its time. Now, it's unclear whether Gerard and Shakespeare would have been aware of each other, but they were certainly neighbours. They moved in the same social circles, and it's been suggested that an illustration in the front cover here is of Shakespeare, the only illustration during his lifetime. Now, if this is true, it would mean there's a stronger link between him and this Bible of botany.
So, let's look at some examples of plants, potions and poisons in the works of the bard and see if Gerard can help identify what exactly they were. No warmth, no breath shall testify thou livest. The roses in thy lips and cheeks shall fade to paly ashes. And in this borrowed likeness of shrunk death, thou shalt continue 42 hours and then awake as from a pleasant sleep. So what was this mystery substance? One likely candidate is Atropa belladonna, also known as deadly nightshade, but which in Gerard's herbal is known as sleeping nightshade. Gerard says that while a small amount leads to madness, a moderate amount causes a dead sleep. Just what Juliet was after. There's plenty of skullduggery in Denmark too. Upon my secure hour, thy uncle stole, with juice of cursed Hebanon in a vial, and in the porches of mine ears did pour the leprous distilment. This time, Shakespeare explicitly identifies the substance used, Hebanon, or henbane. And again, Gerard is a possible source. It causes an unquiet sleep and is deadly to the party. Henbane really can be deadly, but the reason we grow it here is because of its historic medicinal use. Of course, I'm wearing gloves to protect my hands while I'm collecting the seeds. And if we break down that seed, we've got where the most toxic part of the plant is, where the poison is. Now, later in the play, Hamlet kills Ophelia's father, and this, of course, triggers Polonius' son to seek revenge on Hamlet. Poison is again the chosen method, but this time on the tip of a sword. And for Gerard, the ideal concoction for this kind of foul play was aconite, or wolfsbane. He writes, "Wolfsbane is a deadly medicine, wherewith the hunters poison their spears, darts and arrows, that bring present death." Now, like henbane and like atropa, aconite is very, very poisonous. But the difference is this is actually useful garden ornamental. You can see the buds are starting to form just here. It produces this really intense, deep, deep blue flower. All round, a great garden plant, well worth growing. Keep your gloves on. Of course, it's not all tragedy in Shakespeare. There's the odd comedy too. And once again, plants loom large, often in the form of handy love potions. Fetch me that flower, the herb I showed thee once. The juice of it on sleeping eyelids laid will make or man or woman madly dote upon the next living creature that it sees. Love-in-idleness is in fact viola tricolour, which has a long history of use in herbalism. Shakespeare's story has it that Cupid's arrow fell on a little white flower, turning it purple with love's wound, hence its power as an elixir. There's no evidence in Gerard or anywhere else that viola tricolour has any love-inducing effects. In fact, today it's more commonly used to scatter across the top of a salad, just for pretty adornment. And I've tried it, I must say, it's had no perceivable effect on my love life.
The thing that I love about Shakespeare and plants is you feel that he's describing them from personal experience. It's intimate and it's personal, and that really comes through in all his work. But one plant that was around in his time, it was introduced just around the time of his birth, was the potato. And I'm sure he wasn't intimate and personal with that because it was regarded with suspicion when it first arrived, in fact, for the next 200 years, as food only fit for animals or the very poorest. And the delicious potatoes that we savour now certainly wouldn't have been a Shakespearean experience. However, the ones that I've been growing in bags are doing well, and it's time for the next stage. You may remember that I planted a couple of seed potatoes in this bag a few weeks ago. I put them in the greenhouse, kept them watered, and they've grown. They've really grown well. This is about 18 inches tall. They are romping away. But as soon as you see them reach the top of the bag, it is important to earth them up. I'm just using a normal peat-free compost and just pop them around the growth. You won't harm the growth in any way by covering it up. I'll let this grow back up another foot or so, and then I'll top it up again to the top of the bag, and that will maximize the quantity and hopefully the quality of the tubers that I harvest. But remember, keep them well watered. That is the key to good potatoes. Now, you may not be growing potatoes in a bag, but here are some other jobs you can do this weekend. Now is the ideal time for planting out any kind of potatoes. If you're short of space, a very good way to grow them is simply to make a hole in the ground and pop them in using a grid pattern. And this is especially good if you're growing them in raised beds. The new growth of the potatoes won't appear for a few weeks, so to use the ground to the maximum effect, plant out seedlings of lettuce, rocket, or sow some radish, and this will grow and be eaten before it gets shaded out by the potatoes. If you haven't yet cut back your pelargoniums, this is something you should do now, and this will stop them getting leggy and encourage nice, strong, fresh growth. Also, give them a feed. Liquid seaweed is fine, and feed them once a week for the next few months. If left to its own devices, sage becomes a woody shrub with fewer and fewer leaves. But if you cut it back hard, this will produce a mass of fresh leaves that are ideal for cooking with. Now, don't compost the clippings. Either use them in the kitchen, or if you've got a fireplace or a barbecue, put them on that, and they'll fill a room or flavour the food with the most beautiful fragrance of sage. Come on. Now, you want to drink too, don't you? Nellie will give you a hand. Got a couple of orphan lambs. Get down now, it's not for you. Which we're having to bottle feed because the mum died and we're having to look after them, which my son, who is a sheep farmer, has delegated to me for the next 4 weeks. Go on, there you go. There you are. The dogs are rolling all over the Chiandoxias, which I planted last year for the first time. They're a little late, but they're coming up. Everything is bursting out. Well, from all the varied animals here at Longmeadow and me, that's it for today, and I'll see you back here next time. Till then, bye-bye. Come on, let's go back.